Naomi Wright adjusted her robe as she pulled into the parking lot of the Washington, D.C. courthouse. It was a brisk autumn morning, the sky painted in streaks of gold and deep blue. She had been a judge for nearly a decade, but this morning felt different. The case she was about to preside over was personal, a lawsuit challenging racial profiling within the city's police department. As she stepped out of her car, her breath visible in the cool air, she instinctively clutched the badge hanging around her neck. The courthouse loomed before her, grand and imposing, but just as she reached for the entrance, she noticed a young white officer blocking her path. "Ma'am, I need to see some identification." The officer, whose name tag read, "Officer Logan," said, his tone clipped and authoritative. Naomi's brow furrowed. "Excuse me." "Your identification. I need to verify who you are before allowing you inside." Naomi took a slow breath, forcing herself to remain calm. "I'm Judge Wright. I have a case to oversee in 15 minutes. She held up her badge. Logan didn't even glance at it. His gaze traveled over her as if assessing whether she belonged. "There was an incident nearby," he continued, standing firm, "and you matched the description of a suspect." Naomi's grip tightened around her badge. The irony of the moment was suffocating. She was walking into a courtroom to hear a case about racial profiling, and here she was, being profiled at the courthouse door. "Officer," she said, her voice steady, "I am not a suspect. I am the presiding judge." Logan's hand hovered near his holster. "I'm going to need you to step aside and answer a few questions." Naomi's pulse quickened, but before she could respond, another voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Sergeant David Brooks, a black officer with over 20 years on the force, approached with measured steps. His gaze flicked from Naomi to Logan. "She claims to be a judge," Logan muttered, finally glancing at the badge. "But she matches a description." Brooks exhaled sharply, a look of disbelief flashing across his face. "That's Judge Wright," he said firmly. "She presides over cases in this courthouse." A flicker of hesitation crossed Logan's face, but the tension remained thick. "I suggest you let her through," Brooks added, "unless you'd like to explain to the chief why you just detained a sitting judge without cause." Logan took a step back, his lips pressing into a thin line. Naomi didn't say another word. She simply walked past him, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she made her way inside. Underscore 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 underscore. The courtroom was already filling as Naomi took her seat at the bench. She swept her gaze over the attendees, attorneys, reporters, and a jury of 12 who would decide the case before them. The plaintiff, Malcolm Wright, sat at the defendant's table, his hands clasped tightly. He had been arrested outside his own apartment complex. The officers claimed he fit the description of a suspect in a robbery. No evidence, no justification, just another black man deemed suspicious for existing. Naomi inhaled, forcing herself to focus. The trial had to be fair, just, impartial, even if her mind kept drifting back to Officer Logan outside. "Court is now in session," she announced, bringing down the gavel. The prosecution began their opening statement, detailing how Malcolm Wright had been thrown to the ground, handcuffed, and humiliated in front of his neighbors. They played bodycam footage of the incident, the officers' dismissive tones, their failure to answer when Wright asked why he was being arrested. The entire courtroom sat in weighted silence as the truth unfolded before them. Naomi watched as the defense squirmed. Their client, Officer Daniel Foster, sat stiffly in his chair, his expression unreadable. His lawyer argued that Foster had been following protocol, that Wright had been acting suspiciously. But the footage told another story. Naomi's mind flashed back to her own moment outside the courthouse. How easy it was for someone like Logan or Foster to see people like her, like Wright, as threats rather than citizens. Then, the prosecution called their next witness. "Officer Daniel Foster, please take a stand." Foster hesitated but rose from his seat. He walked stiffly to the stand, took his oath, and sat. The prosecutor, Alicia Reed, wasted no time. "Officer Foster, why did you stop Malcolm Wright that day?" she asked. Her tone measured. Foster cleared his throat. He looked out of place. Naomi's grip on her gavel tightened. There it was again. That phrase. And what about him looked out of place? Reed pressed. Foster hesitated. He was looking around nervously. Or, Reed countered, was he simply unlocking his apartment door? Foster didn't respond. The questioning continued, and slowly, cracks formed in his testimony. He contradicted himself. He struggled to explain why Wright had been detained. By the time Reed was finished, Foster looked far less sure of himself. Naomi turned to the jury. She could see their expressions shifting. Some looked outraged, others conflicted. But one thing was certain. The truth was staring them in the face. As the trial progressed, Naomi remained stoic, professional. But inside she seethed. This case wasn't an anomaly. It was a symptom of a much deeper issue. And she was determined to see justice served. Underscore, 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 underscore. By the time the jury delivered their verdict, guilty on all counts, the courtroom was silent. The weight of the moment settled over everyone present. Naomi watched as Wright's shoulders sagged with relief, his eyes glistening. Foster, however, sat frozen. The realization of what had just happened, of the fact that for once, the system had held him accountable, seemed to drain the color from his face. "Court is adjourned," Naomi announced, her voice firm. As the room emptied, Sergeant Brooks approached her. "That was powerful," he said. "You handled it well." Naomi nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. Today had been a victory, but it was only one battle in a much larger war. She thought about Logan outside the courthouse, about Foster's excuses, about all the Malcolm Wrights in the world who had been stopped, detained, humiliated, without justice. The work wasn't done, but as she stepped out into the crisp evening air, she knew she would return tomorrow, ready to fight again. Because justice wasn't a single verdict. It was a relentless pursuit, and she wasn't stopping anytime soon.